Charles, New York. Fine. Okay, hello. Where are you from? Never heard of it. Okay. We're now standing in the outer wall of the Tower of London. That's to say between the inner and outer veiling or defensive wall. The inner wall behind me is 50 feet high. The outer one behind you, 28 feet thick. Down there you can see Mint Street. This is the street where all the coins of the British Empire. Right. If you come from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa or Canada, if you come from quite a lot of Africa, the Middle East, quite a lot of Asia, some parts of China, if you come from the Caribbean and lots of other islands and territories dotted around the world, including the United Kingdom and era, then at some point or other you've been part of the British Empire. And therefore I'd like you to join me in an enthusiastic and rousing huzzah. Something like this. British Empire, huzzah! Huzzah! Can I do it? British Empire! Huzzah! Very good, I'm very impressed. Now let's hear the Americans have a go. Rubbish! You're supposed to be united. Hang on. By the way, you don't get to say huzzah either. You made your choice. However, as we've been getting on so well recently, I'm willing to give you a yeehaw. You can have a yeehaw, alright? So everyone who's not American, British Empire, huzzah! Americans? Yeehaw! That's why I'll never have an empire. Now we had the master of the mint here was a man called Sir Walter Raleigh. No, it wasn't like that. Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton. I'll get Walter Raleigh's later on. Sir Isaac Newton came here. He was the master of the mint here in the 17th century. He was a very clever man. He came up with the idea of milling the outside of coins to stop people cutting bits off and making their own. That's very clever, isn't it? He also invented gravity, a very fine British invention. Right. This is the bell tower, and it's within this tower that Sir Thomas More was held for refusing to accept King Henry VIII as the supreme head of the Church in England. At the same time, and for the very same reason, his good friend John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester, was held in the upper chamber. Both men were to suffer terribly for about 15 months, but could not be persuaded to abandon their beliefs, and were finally led out of these chambers through those gates and up the hill to be publicly beheaded as traitors in 1535. Exactly 400 years later, both men were canonised as saints in the Roman Catholic faith. Another man to spend a bit of time here is a man called James Scott. He was the Duke of Monmouth, the eldest of 13 illegitimate children of King Charles II. After the death of his father in 1685, this incredibly handsome and popular young man was persuaded to stake his claim to the throne because his uncle, King James II, was a practicing Roman Catholic. To press home his claim, he landed in the west country of England and marched inland, gathering popular Protestant support in what is known as the Monmouth or Pitchfork Rebellion. That rebellion was crushed at the Battle of Sedgemoor on the 6th of July 1685, but James Scott evaded capture by fleeing the battlefield. He hid in towns and villages for a few days, but was quickly caught and brought here to the Tower. There was no need for a trial, as he'd been condemned to death in his absence, and 3 days later he was led out of here through those gates and up the hill. But this time, instead of being pelted with fruit and vegetables like all the others, all the ladies came, and they threw flowers in his path as he walked up in silence. That's how incredibly handsome and popular he was. He looked a bit like me. An inflatable version of William Shatner. When he got to the top, he was met by the executioner, a man called Jack Ketch. I call him an executioner. He was actually a part-time executioner. He was a part-time butcher. He was a full-time drinker. This was the most botched and bloody and brutal execution in English history. Jack Ketch not only drunk this day, he even managed to bring the wrong type of axe to the execution. He wasn't sharp, he wasn't balanced. He famously took 5 strokes of the axe before James Scott lost consciousness. The first one landed squarely in James Scott's left shoulder blade, and the second took the very top of Scott's head off. Scott managed to get to his feet and say, "For God's sakes, man, finish the job." When he went back down, the third one hit him in the right shoulder blade, the fourth in the lower lumbar. The fifth twisted in Ketch's hand and slapped him squarely across the back of the head, thankfully knocking him out. There was a further 3 strokes employed before it was obvious that Scott was dead, and even then the head remained stubbornly attached to the body. And so Ketch improvised. He went down on his drunken knees, pulled out his butcher's knife, and to the stunned silence of them lovely ladies in the front row, proceeded to saw through the remaining stubborn sinew, tendon, gristle, and bone. Sweet dreams, kids. Strangely, the head and the body were returned to the tower and sewn back together, and we have no idea why. And behind you is a tall, narrower archway than the one through which we passed. It's called the Sally Port or Royal Entrance, and beyond which is a small drawbridge, which is connected to a set of stairs. Rather than try and go through those narrow, crowded streets where convoys could be attacked, stores stolen, and prisoners set free, the monarchy would come down the River Thames on their barges, tie up alongside the stairs, and come through those gates, which are original and date back more than 700 years. And it was at those very gates that King Henry VIII so lovingly greeted his second wife, Queen Anne Boleyn, on the eve of their wedding. We're going to reenact that scene for you. Right now, right over here. Right now, right now. Yes, can I just point out, I've seen quite a lot of films about this, and not once did Anne Boleyn wear sunglasses. Yes. The king was absolutely furious. Just to be clear, I'm going to be the king. Absolutely furious. Anne Boleyn was over an hour late. Does not pay to keep the king waiting. However, on looking upon her beautiful blue bowling eyes, heart melting, he went down on one. He got down on his. He stood up. He took her hand, her tiny, massive hand. With a nightclub sticker still on it. Looked into those eyes and he said, I promise to love you for the rest of your life. Poor Anne was fated to return to the tower 3 years later, but for a very different reason, through a very different gate. This is a round of applause for the Queen. What have you had in your hand? Now, talking of Anne Boleyn, it's now time to be heading. Please be careful, there is a stove just there that will trip you up if you're not careful. Follow me to